What a lovely group has gathered. It's certainly a terribly sad occasion, and yet there is comfort in being together and being together in this sacred space that meant so much to Suzanne Slatkin. So your presence is the greatest honor, but we are also going to thank God for her life and cherish the moment as a family, a temple family and a community family. O God, you have been our refuge in every generation. Before the mountains came into being, before you brought forth the earth and the world, from eternity to eternity, you are God. As for us, you turn us to repentance and say, "Return, you mortals." The days of our years are 70, or by reason of strength, 80 years, or these days by reason of exceptional strength, an extra 5, right? But 1,000 years in God's sight are but as yesterday when it is past, or as a watch in the night. Teach us, therefore, to number our days, that we may attain a heart of wisdom. And may your favor, O God, be upon us. Establish the work of our hands, that it may long endure. Death has taken our beloved Suzanne Slatkin. Our friends grieve in their darkened world. In their silence, there is lamentation. In their tears, loneliness. Lost in their sorrow, may they find the presence of loving friends and family. Hear them, O God, be with them. For Suzanne's love that united us in life and which death cannot sever. For her companionship that we shared along life's path and which continues through the tenderness of memory. For the gifts of her heart and mind that brought us joy and happiness and is now a precious remembrance. For all these and more, we give our thanks to God. In this time of grief, we listen to the voice of our sacred scriptures that brings us the ever-new message of God's nearness. It tells us of our kinship with the Creator, in light as in darkness, in joy as in sorrow, in life as in death. John Sauvé, our wonderful music director, is going to sing the 23rd Psalm.
Adonai roi lo exar binode she'arbitseni al menuchot she'naleni nafshi shove yancheni b'magle tzedek yancheni b'magle tzedek leman shemo gam ki elek begetz mavet lo ira ki ata imadi shivtecha no mishantecha hemayanachamuni takrok lefanai Shulchan Getzorerai Tishanta Veshemen Roshi Kozi Revaya Aktov Chesed Yedivoni Kol Yemei Chaya Kol Yemei Chaya Veshavti Bevet Adonai Leorek Yamim Adonai Rohi Lo Exal Adonai Rohi Lo Exal.
Thank you. Many of you have the flyer that has been passed out, and many of you know it by heart anyway, but please join in the 23rd Psalm, which is on the inside. Eternal God, you are my shepherd, I shall not want. You make me lie down in green pastures. You lead me beside still waters. You restore my soul. You lead me in right paths for the sake of your name. Even when I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. With rod and staff, you comfort me. You have set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of God forever. What a shock. One day, our friend Suzanne Slatkin was leading a pleasant enough and seemingly healthy life. She had lots of friends. Look at this crowd here this afternoon. And very much lots of friends here in this sacred community at Beth-El. Then suddenly, a silent and aggressive cancer snatched her away from us. So 2 weeks ago, she was fine, or thought she was. We did. Looking forward to a trip to Paris with her friend Ellen Rubinson that would have started this past Sunday. And now she is gone, but not to Paris. Psalm 90 says that the span of our years is 70 years, or given strength 80 years. Yet their span is trouble and sorrow. They are soon gone, and we fly away. Scholars tell us that the 70 to 80 years, or 70, or even by reason of strength 80 years, is probably wishful thinking by the poet in biblical times, where life expectancy on the average was more like 35. But in our time, even amidst our tears, it is worth celebrating a life of 70 to 80 years. And Suzanne, as I mentioned, split the difference at 75. That's a full psalmic life. One can do a lot, and she did. Enjoy a lot, and she did. One can love and be loved, make a contribution to the world in 80 years and 10 or 15. So consider the biographical data for starters. Suzanne was born to Martha and Roy Norman here in Fort Worth and spent most of her life here. She really liked the place. She graduated Arlington Heights High School and then earned a Bachelor of Science degree in elementary education at Texas Wesleyan University. I'll come back to the education, the teaching part in a moment, but she was married to Rick Slatkin and raised Bethany, who of course is here with us, and Scott, who tragically is not. She was a doting, active mother when they were growing up, a campfire girls leader and things like that, a volunteer at the kids' schools. Later, in the natural course of things, Suzanne was thrilled to be mother-in-law and grandmother to Bethany's husband, Christian, and of course to their children, Preston and Campbell. I know you gave her the most thrill of anyone. She was close too, I should add, with her brother and sister and with family, lots of family all over. So she was loved and she loved. There's no grief worse than losing your child. As I and lots of us will recall, Scott was a likable, sociable kid, born with a heart defect. Remember that psalm verse, though, the years of our lives, their span includes trouble and sorrow before it is over and we fly away. That's the verse which follows this 70 or even 80 years. Trouble and sorrow, we all have some. The Slatkins were assured Scott's heart would be fine playing non-contact sports, as I got the story. And then he ended up running the field, running the track at Arlington Heights to be on the baseball team. And in preseason training there on the track, he fell and died. So yes, Suzanne had heartbreak she did not deserve, the loss of Scott, and later a divorce. But she had too much heart, too much quiet resolve to give up on life. Always likable and easygoing, you know her, right? Before the family arrived, she also taught special education. And after raising the family, went back to work, now as a parent educator for the Fort Worth ISD. I had to ask what a parent educator does, but it's an important job. She meets with parents of newborns and very young children so that they give them exposure to books and to learning and an enriched environment so that they'll succeed when they do get to school. She later taught at Wesley Park Elementary until retirement, taking particular pleasure, not surprisingly, in helping young children learn to read and to love books, which she very much did herself. This was a nice, bright, warm, and caring woman, a glass half full sort of a person who would not be held back by life's trials. Years ago, I might add, she became a convert to Judaism and truly took it to heart. She knew God had blessed her with plenty to appreciate and savor in life, very much including her Dachshunds, Lady and Tootsie at the moment. Suzanne saw a lot of lovely places around the world, from England and Scotland to Israel, from Hawaii to Holland and Switzerland. She played mahjong. She enjoyed book clubs. That's a good thing for readers. She liked to go to the movies and going out to dinner with friends. Moreover, we rabbis love our regulars. I and Rabbi Zimmerman and the loyal attenders here at Friday nights at Beth-El are really going to miss having her here week after week amongst her friends, and they'll miss going out to dinner with her. She was just generally an active part of this community. So, once more, what a shock. What a loss to all of us and especially to her beloved family. But like Suzanne herself, we should not focus on life's troubles and sorrows, but rather on its blessings and joys, of which her spirit and her love will ever remain fine examples for the family and for all of us. Suzanne's son-in-law, Christian Kelso, is going to share a few thoughts, and then a couple of friends, Sarah Rogers and Cynthia Alcon, are also going to give us some personal memories.
Thank you, Rabbi Mecklenburger, Rabbi Zimmerman. Appreciate it. Wow. Thank you all for coming. What a wonderful testament to Suzanne's memory. It kind of fell to me to say some words on behalf of the immediate family. I'm going to try and make it short and hold it together. We'll see how well that works. I see so many people here, and I just think what a beloved person Suzanne was. Suzanne and I had a lot of things in common. We were both raised in a Methodist tradition. We both fell deeply in love with someone who was raised in a Jewish tradition. We loved to watch the PBS Mysteries on Sunday night. I could strike up a conversation with Suzanne at any time about just about anything. And I've been thinking about that over the last couple of days. And I think, that's really not something that was unique to me. I bet everybody in this room feels exactly the same way. Suzanne loved people. She loved to be around people. She loved to chit-chat. Sometimes she could be a little nosy. For those who don't know it, my wife hates talking on the phone. Why talk when you can text? But around our house, if Bethany was on the phone, I know who was on the other side. And most of the time, I can actually hear her from the other side of the house. Suzanne and I share that. We have distinct voices and don't normally need a microphone. She was a wonderful person, and I think everybody here has had their life enriched by being around her. I love the tradition that my Jewish friends have taught to me of saying, let someone's memory be a blessing. And I think we are all terribly blessed to have that memory of sweet Suzanne. So I'm going to lose it now. So I'm going to step down, but thank you once again. I really appreciate everybody coming. And let's all remember her and have that memory be a true and honest to God blessing, because it is. Thank you.
Sarah? Want to step?
Well, maybe I have to be a stool. Well, Suzanne and I were Mutt and Jeff for about 45 years. And very often, we couldn't go places and walk right beside each other because we always had a crick in my neck. When Suzanne asked me to do a eulogy for her last week, I said, Suzanne, I don't think I can do it, because I didn't think I could talk about Suzanne in the past tense. But I know that it was important to her. Here I'm doing just what she wanted me to do, just like always. I always did what she wanted me to do. That's the kind of friendship we had. We did whatever needed to be done to take care of each other. When Scott died, her heart was broken. And her biggest concern was that because he was so young, people would forget him. I look over here at all of you young 40-ish boys and girls, and I know that the boys and the girls from Scott's life never forgot Suzanne. They worked together, they stayed together, they were always where they needed to be. And Drew, her biggest thing in life was that you got married last year, because she worried that Drew was never going to get married. But the rest of you all got married, and I know that you saw Suzanne as your second mother, because she certainly thought you were her other children. And thank you for coming, because that tells her, she knows now that nobody has ever forgotten Scott. What I'm going to say is to reassure you that Suzanne was special. Maybe more than special in some ways, but she was a great friend. She was the best friend you could ever have, and a character you will never forget. And I mean that very respectfully, but she was a character. Family was so special to Suzanne. The happiest times in her life revolved around being Bethany and Scott's mom, and being Preston and Campbell's bubby. Oh, she was proud of that term. And Preston, she told me last week that you had deemed something that she did a real bubby thing to do. So we all know what I'm going to tell you. We all know that she did a lot of real bubby things. So every time that happens, just think, oh, bubby, because you're going to have lots of those for the rest of your life. She did whatever she could to make Bethany and Preston and Campbell and Christian's life very special. Christian, she was so proud that Bethany and you had found each other. And she often talked about what a wonderful family y'all had, what a wonderful life y'all had, where you went, what you did. Yeah, she talked and talked. But I know last week we talked about Christian and about how she was so happy to know that you were there to take care of Bethany for the rest of her life and to take care of your beautiful children, because that was probably the most important thing in her life. She left in peace knowing that. Being a part of the Norman family was a real sense of pride with her. I found it a privilege to know her Aunt Frida. I know y'all all knew her as La Frida, but in my life, she was Aunt Frida. And she loved her cousins and their families. She always looked forward to the Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving was asparagus wrapped and roasted. And Easter was we filled Easter eggs, because that's what she did. And she loved coming, fellas. She knew that she was going to come to your house. Where are you, fellas? I didn't see you. She knew she was going to come to your house and have a very special time during those holidays. She loved Beth. Being Beth's big sister, she always, she thought she knew everything. Let's see, where are we, Beth? Beth. She thought she knew everything that you should do, like she did with everybody. And she loved being your big sister, and loved being able to see Pete and the girls whenever she could get around to it, or whenever y'all could get around to it. She was so excited that the girls had gotten married, and I'm so glad that all of y'all got to come and say goodbye to her. And Larry, she had told me I had to change this, because she had told me you weren't coming. She said, I know that Larry it's too far from Hawaii. I know he's not going to be here, but I know he's thinking about me. So I was so surprised to see you today, and I thank you for coming, because we all know how special she was. Okay, Suzanne, now I'm not going to be very reverent about Suzanne here because Suzanne and my relationship wasn't always that way. Suzanne was the definition of FOMO, you know, fear of missing out. It wouldn't surprise me if we looked it up in the dictionary if there wasn't a picture of Suzanne, because she didn't miss out on anything. Whenever she heard about a new group of people, Suzanne was always willing to join and participate. She didn't just join, she always participated. Each group soon became a new family to her. Her community was full of families. She actively participated in whatever she did. The list was long, but she always had time for everyone. Her Waverly Park teacher family, the Mothers as Teachers group that she cherished, First Wives Club, her Temple family, Silver Frogs. I thought, Suzanne, you've lost your mind, but she loved going to Silver Frogs, and her Mahjong groups. The Ridgely Hills Carpool Moms. Y'all are all here, and y'all are very special. The Rubinson family. That was, that was almost like her real family. And she was a member of several book clubs that met for lunch once a month. We already had planned the January meeting, or February meeting, that was going to be at her house. I'll tell you now, she was going to have chili and cornbread, and she has some new bowls, 8 or 9, however many there are of y'all. She has new bowls put in her cabinet for y'all to have the chili. Now, isn't that Suzanne? Suzanne was the ultimate teacher. We can't put a number on how many children and adults she touched in a positive way. She started as a parent. She started as a teacher, but when her kids were old enough, she came back as a parent educator for parents as teachers. She worked there and then became a trainer, and I see many of you that she trained, that she taught how to do making cakes and all sorts of things like that, because we worked on those together too. She worked over 20 years as a parent educator, a classroom teacher, an ESL teacher, and a tutor. Finally, she was a tutor these last few years. In August, she told me that she wasn't going to work anymore, that she was 75 years old and needed a break. 3 weeks later, there were kids coming to her house to be tutored, because I'm not sure they really needed a lot of tutoring, but she could reassure their parents that these kids were going to have everything they needed to do well in school. Her journey as an educator began when she joined the Parents as Teachers program in the early 90s. She loved working with young parents to teach them how to teach their babies and small children. She was so proud when they would show up in her classroom as a kindergartner, a first grader, a fourth grader. And they were always ready to learn because she had taught their families how to teach them. This year, her journey as a parent educator came full circle. She hired a young lady to take care of her dogs while she was in France. Didn't quite make it. But she told me, she said, Sadie was my first infant as a parent educator. Sadie's in college, finishing her education to become a part of life. What a true circle of life is that. And her mother had learned enough as a parent educator to become a parent educator in the Parents as Teachers programs. That thrilled Suzanne. No matter how you knew Suzanne, there are some things that we know about her and we have to say about her, even though, because we love her and because she was Suzanne. These are the things that will always make us smile when we remember her. Suzanne loved her coffee and carried around a mug. I would say it was full, but it was never completely full because it was just almost full. Most of us remember that Suzanne walked around with a coffee stain down her front, had a cup ring on the papers that she passed out to her kids that she had graded, left a path of drips all the way wherever she was going when she came to say hello. And whenever you see it now, smile and think about our Suzanne is somewhere around. At first, she was a little embarrassed about the fact that she dripped, but eventually she just embraced it. That was a part of who she was. So when you see the stains, when you see the drips, when you see the rings on the tables and the papers, just say what I always said to her. Oh, Suzanne. I expect to hear that a lot. Suzanne was the queen of 20 questions. Everyone she met had to go through the Suzanne Inquisition. And if you ever called her out on it and said, Suzanne, don't ask so many questions, she'd look at me and say, well, I just wanted to know. And no, she did. I guess we're going to have to reassign that job to somebody else in each of her groups because she was the information woman. We all know that Suzanne loved to go out to eat. She often struggled, though, with deciding what she wanted. Never could make up her mind. But I remember one time we were at Westside Cafe having breakfast, and her bill, not our bill, her bill came to $22 because she just kept adding sides. And, she took a little bit home to Lady, but she was able to eat most of it, and then said, oh, this place has gotten really expensive. Well, Suzanne, if you'd buy what's on the table, but you bought one of everything. And if she went somewhere else and couldn't decide what she wanted, that was never a problem. I hope maybe that was just our family, but I don't think it was. It was never a problem because she'd just reach across with her fork and her long arms, grab a little sample, and see, I just want to see what it tastes like. We won't define what a little sample was. Because as my kids say, she always took grandmama bites. Even COVID didn't stop that. She would say, oh, I know, I'm not supposed to eat after you, but I will. We also all know about her driving. Suzanne never met a curb she didn't like. She even ran up and got stuck on the boulders by Barnes & Noble on Hewlin one day. Had to get a wrecker to get her down off of that. She needed a slush fund to keep the bumpers and the fenders of her Lexus where they were supposed to be. Yes, and she did learn about duct tape, and we never could get all of the sticky off of that Lexus either, could we? And I would say that wasn't an old age problem. That was just Suzanne being Suzanne. Her jewelry and valuables were very precious to her, and she always kept them in a safe place, like McDonald's sacks and red carpet sacks and pockets in her car. And they were very great, safe places until she decided to clean her car out and threw them in the dumpster I've dumpster dived with her a time or two, looking for diamond bracelets and Rolex watches. Suzanne. Oh, Suzanne. Suzanne was also like to think she was a do-it-yourselfer. She loved to paint. Just 3 weeks ago, she painted her front door and her porch swing green. And Bethany, if you take that porch swing, it has at least 15 coats of paint on it. And each coat was a different color, a brighter one each time. And most of it was painted. That's all I can say. And she never was able, she had a problem that she couldn't remember to put down a drop cloth. And she could dump over a gallon of paint in a minute. She could step in the paint pan, and what would she do? She would scream, "Oh no!" And everybody that knew her knew Suzanne just stepped in the paint. Then she'd take her roller and she would just paint like the dickens to get it all painted around to where nobody would know that she had spit and had dropped that. And it worked most of the time, except for the big pink round circle on the brand new Berber carpet on Clayton Road. That one never came out. But for all of her quirks, Suzanne was the best friend you could have. She would do anything you asked of her. She was kind, she was funny, she was loving. She made my life better, and I know she made every one of your lives better. And I can't talk about Suzanne without one last story. Since my son Randy came home to say goodbye to Suzanne, she would expect me to tell everyone that he wouldn't be here if it hadn't been for Suzanne. Years ago, about 35 years ago, after Randy's first swim lesson at Ridgely, she walked up and he came running. Suzanne was the best, running up to her, and I saw him and she said, "Oh, Randy, did you have a swim lesson?" And he said, "Yes." And she said, "What did you learn?" And he said, and then he put his hands on his hips and he said, "Let me show you." And took a running dive for the middle of the Ridgely pool. Suzanne was screaming, "Lifeguards, save that baby, save that baby." And they could have hurt her. Everyone here knows they should have hurt her, but they didn't. So I was running to catch him because he had gotten away from me. I was running to catch him as I saw her with those long legs take a big step into that pool at 5 feet. And all I could see were her brand new white kids. And on her arm was her brand new Dooney and Burke purse. And down she went, and she saved that boy. And he just looked at me like, "Please don't tell that story," because she has told that story to everybody in his life. The first time she met his fiance, she said, "Randy wouldn't be here if it wasn't for me." When he got married, she said to his in-laws, "Randy wouldn't be here except for me." So, Randy, I had to tell it one more time, and you won't ever have to hear it again. But remember, Randy wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Suzanne. Thank you, Suzanne, for making sure that he made it to be a young adult. Suzanne, my family, and I love you and miss you forever. I will love you forever because you were more like my sister than my friend. Thank you for coming and saying goodbye to her. And know that she loved everyone in this room and she would be so pleased that she had a big send-off. Thank you.
And Cynthia, thank you.
That's a tough act to follow, isn't it? So I stand here today representing not just myself, but an extraordinary group of friends who have become family. We call ourselves the Shabbat Girls and Marty. And together, we share more than just dinners, holidays, and services. We share lives, laughter, and memories. We have learned through illness and death that we can rely on each other as a true family does. I am a latecomer to the group. I've only been in Fort Worth for 14 years. Otherwise, the connections and friendships date back decades and decades. Suzanne was a treasured member of our group who was gone too soon and too suddenly. Suzanne could light up a room, as we have heard, as her laughter was contagious and her smile a constant presence. As a group, we gathered for dinner the other night to remember Suzanne and to think about how to memorialize our dear friend. And I wanted to share some of those thoughts. You'll see that there are many that have been raised before, and one of the things I love about that is Suzanne was who she was to all of us. She didn't change depending on which group she was with. Suzanne was always fun to be with, quick to laugh, always with a smile on her face and a kind word to share. I have often said that Suzanne is the nicest person I ever met. And she was fun. Suzanne loved a good adventure, loved to travel, loved movies, loved going out to eat, loved her Datsuns, and loved being around her family and friends, as we all have said. Suzanne was one of those special people, as the saying goes, who never met a stranger. For Suzanne, that meant she had a special gift of always finding ways to bond and make connections with people. And she made people feel treasured and special. She gave generously of her time and of herself to anyone in need, to our community, and to our temple. Suzanne loved children, as we've heard, and she wanted every child to learn how to read, and more importantly, to love reading as she did. The gift of reading changes lives, and Suzanne undoubtedly changed more lives than she ever knew due to her passion to teach children how to read. And we never saw anyone devour a book like Suzanne, and the books never saw it coming. Each book was well loved by the time she finished it. The books came back with creased spines, as we've heard, maybe a coffee or food stain or two, and an imprint of the joy she'd found within those pages. Suzanne hosted our Erev Yom Kippur dinner every year. Everyone brought food to contribute, and our dinners were full of our usual laughter, stories, and conversations flowing over one another. Each dinner included Suzanne exclaiming how much she loved the chicken, or loved the veggies, or the challah, or the desserts. She made sure everyone's contributions were publicly appreciated. Suzanne's joy for life was not slowed down by insignificant details, as we've heard, like worrying about dropping a few crumbs. She loved food, except spicy food. It was rare that Suzanne would make it through a day without her clothes, including her beloved hand-me-ups from friends' wardrobes, having a stain or a spot on them. So we have decided a little bit different phrasing from what we've just heard, to coin a new phrase that we have done as Suzanne whenever we spill on ourselves. And let's face it, Suzanne was not alone in dropping food on herself. Suzanne exemplified the importance of living fully, laughing freely, and never letting a spill ruin the moment. Joy, laughter, happiness, and kindness are our enduring memories of Suzanne and Suzanne's legacy to our group. In Suzanne's honor, let's embrace every laugh, every meal, and even every crumb in the same joy and humor that she did. May we all remember her laughter, her kindness, her spirit, and the joy of time spent together.
Thank you for sharing those beautiful memories. Our own individual thoughts, anecdotes, in so many ways, while they're precious to us, convey the totality, even in a myriad of different ways, of what someone so full is. I did not know Suzanne as well as most of you, but she gave so much time volunteering in the office. And the way you thought about your day could be so captured in a first look. We've all heard stories of going to a doctor's office or going to a church or a synagogue or going to a store, and someone's having a bad day and they look, and you say, well, I don't really want to come back here again. It's not a reflection on you. Suzanne had a smile bigger than this building. I could never tell if it was going to be a good day or a bad day walking into the building when Suzanne was in charge at the front desk, because she always had that big, wonderful, welcoming smile that said, this is your home, which meant I never knew what was waiting me behind the office. But that first moment was incredible. And of course, she was a teacher. I looked at the legacy page, and often you look at the legacy obituary page and there's really nothing below it. But already yesterday, there were all these comments from people that had learned from her or known from her, testaments to the many ways they knew her life. And finally, someone was sharing with me the way Suzanne conveyed to the universe, which in a way was, you're here, you fill people's lives, you do your best, you move on, you're gone. And I said, well, that's very Jewish, because in Judaism we believe people live on in the lives they touch, in the way they were. And so in her pain, and even as we're glad she didn't suffer unnecessarily, we know that she lives on in so many stories and meals and jokes. And I'll tell you that as we were leaving the cemetery, just a very small number of us, I overheard, you always want to be careful what a rabbi heard, that one person said to another, you never wanted a full glass of red wine near Suzanne. I didn't know her that way, but I thought, what a wonderful image of a part of her I didn't know, in her loud, wonderful, wine-spilling way of filling your life with hers. And so I will just say that the reading in our Torah, the reading in our scrolls this week, is the beginning of the story of Abraham and Sarah. And the Torah says that when they pick up and move, they brought with them many souls. And the rabbis say, what does that mean, they brought many souls? And they said, well, Abraham and Sarah, which are part of her Hebrew name, opened their tents and their lives to every single person they met. And I thought, that's Suzanne. As a teacher, as a friend, she opened her tent to everyone she met. And it's also a reminder to keep sharing those stories. Something occurs to you later, something occurs to you in the middle of the night, next week when you're talking to a friend, jot down that moment, that memory, that smell, that sound, that story, that spill. Share them with her friends and children, because that's how she will live on in each of us, along with the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of children she tutored and taught. We think about the Kaddish as a prayer of remembering, of death. The Kaddish is a prayer of life. The Kaddish is a prayer of taking a step forward at a moment of loss. The El Malei Rachamim is a prayer of memory and death and hoping that God watches over us and her in our steps. And so you can find inside the service sheet with that wonderful picture of her smile, the words in Hebrew and English to El Malei Rachamim. Please rise. El Malei Rachamim Shochim Bamromim Hamse Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei Hashchina Im Kedoshim Ujorim Kizohar Rakia Mazirim Et Nishmat Shoshana Ruth Bat Avraham Vasara Shahalcha Liolama Baha Rachamim Yastura Beseter Kenafav Liolamim Vaitzro b'Yisro Chaim et Nishmata. Adonai hu nachalata. V'tanuach b'shalom al mishkava v'nomar. Amen. Together in English, if you wish. O God, full of compassion, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest under the wings of your presence to our loved one who has entered eternity. Master of mercy, let her find refuge forever in the shadow of your wings, and let her soul be bound up in the bond of eternal life. The eternal God is her inheritance. May she rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. Before we turn to the Kaddish, on the back side of the service sheet, a reminder there is a reception turning to the right toward the great hall. As you leave the congregation, we ask you to let the immediate family and friends please depart first so they can greet you there. As we turn to these words, Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbi, v'yalma divrach erute v'yamlich malchute, b'chayechon v'yomechon, b'chayed chol beit Yisrael, ba'agalau v'zman kariv v'imru. Amen. Yehei shmei Rabba mevorach leolam u'lamei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitrom v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yital shmeid kudsha b'richu. Le'ila min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbachata v'nechamata. Da'amiram b'yalma v'imru. Amen. Yehei shlama Rabba min shemai. V'chayim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Say shalom b'mromav. Hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael. Zichronam levracha, may her memory be for blessing, and a reminder that her name will be mentioned before we say the Kaddish prayer for 4 Friday nights during the Jewish period of mourning known as Shloshim, and also at our daily minyan at 6 o'clock here in the chapel. May God console all who are blessed by her life. May you go here to peace. And we say, Amen.